The DARS report is a degree audit tool that you can use to track your progress towards graduation. It's an excellent tool, but it can be a challenge to read, so what I want to do is to go through a DARS report and to show you what I look at when I'm reviewing a student's progress. I won't look at everything, so I really want to focus in on the parts that I think are most useful to you. To start with, though, I want to make sure that you know how to run a DARS report. So to actually run a DARS report, go to the registration website. Scroll down to the very bottom of the page and you'll see the heading Graduation and Degree Audits, and below that you're going to see the link for Enter DARS Web for Students. It's pretty straightforward, so once you click on that link you should be able to run a report. The report we're looking at today is one that a student allowed me to use. I have gone through though and I've taken out the personal information. I've changed the semester in which they've taken the classes. I've changed all the grades to A's. I've done what I can to protect the student's identity, so you probably won't recognize this person. The first thing I look at is the transfer information and the hours accepted towards admissions. And if you expand that, this is what appears on the student's DARS report. Transfer information is everything on the transcripts that a student has turned into UIS. Hours accepted towards admissions is what the admissions office is able to move from the transcripts onto the UIS formal record. Remember that the UIS has a policy that limits the number of 1 and 200 level courses a student can include in a degree to 60. So it is possible that even though you have a lot of hours here, if you were at a community college exclusively, this number is going to be 60. Remember, it's possible to do a petition to include additional lower level hours. If those petitions are approved, the number would actually increase from 60 to however many hours you've had petitioned in. In this particular case, this is a newer student, so when I look at this, I can tell that this student has 60 lower level hours and 16 upper level hours of transfer credit. The next thing I look at are the general education requirements. The DARS report does an excellent job of reviewing general education. What we're looking at here, you can see, for example, English composition 1 and 2 are in place. So in this case, there's a plus sign next to the English. You can see the student hasn't taken speech yet, so there's a minus sign next to that. So what we're looking for here are minus signs. So we can see the student needs speech, and at the bottom here we can see the student needs math. Since we're seeing grades for the first time, it might be worth noting that Intro to Physical Geology was taken at another school, and I can tell that because there's a T in front of the grade. So A is the grade and T stands for transfer. The next area I look at is ECHE. DARS does a really good job of tracking ECHE. In this particular case, the student is new to UIS, so they haven't taken ECHE yet, but it would work just like the general education. Once the student had a US Communities class in place, the class would appear here, and this would turn into a plus sign. This is an area, though, where DARS can be confusing. Your DARS report is actually keyed into the semester in which you started at UIS. So if you, let's say you're here for a couple years and you take a ECHE class that didn't exist when you entered, it's possible, it's not necessarily guaranteed, but it's possible that your DARS report won't recognize that course as being an ECHE course, and it may not appear here. That's not necessarily a problem, though. It doesn't mean you can't include the classes in ECHE. It just means that we need to do some paperwork to update DARS, if you will. It's a simple petition. We can do it immediately, or we can do it when you graduate. It's whatever your comfort level is. To be honest with you, if you don't notice that's an issue, I always notice when the student graduates, and I fill out the paperwork myself at the end. So it's all a matter of your comfort level. If you want to fix these problems immediately, contact me. We'll work on that. If you realize it's there and you feel comfortable, just leave it and I'll fix it when you graduate. Ultimately, though, if you have any questions because you feel a class isn't appearing in the ECHE area and it should, contact me and let's talk about that as soon as possible, just to make sure it's a simple problem and not a bigger problem maybe because you've taken the wrong class and didn't realize you did. The next area I look at are the liberal studies courses. And in this particular case, you can see the student has taken self-directed learning and has taken LIS 460. So you can see a green check mark to indicate that this requirement is completely done. And you see a red X to indicate that the student still needs some core requirements. That's pretty normal here because every student has to take LIS 451 and you can't take it until your last semester. So that's not necessarily, the red X in this case isn't necessarily a problem. The next area I look at, and I actually skip all the way down to this part that starts with the heading 120 semester hours are required to earn a bachelor's degree. This is the part that I think is most useful and the part I use most. This is what it looks like expanded. In this case, you can see that the student has 92 hours and needs 28 hours to graduate, which is really good information to have all in one place. The section also lists all of the students' classes that are formally being credited towards their degree, and it lists them in 3 stages. So I want to start backwards. I want to start with section 3. Section 3 is all of the lower level classes that are being included in the degree. This is, you can see in this case, these are all transfer courses, but they need not all be transfer courses. So if you've taken a lower level class here at UIS, it will always appear here in this area. Your upper level hours are recorded in sections 1 and 2. And the reason it's broken into 2 sections is because UIS policy requires that a student complete at least 30 hours at UIS in order to earn a degree. So in section 1, we're tracking only UIS hours so that we can count those 30 hours. In this particular case, you can see the student has 16 UIS hours, but still needs to complete 14 to hit that magic number of 30, I should say. The second section lists the other 30 hours, the second 30 hours of those upper level hours, and this can include all transfer hours, or it can include a combination of transfer hours and UIS courses, or it can include all UIS courses. In this case, you can see this is where all of the students' upper level transfer hours appear. I want to show you one other student's 120 hour section. This is one where I discovered a problem that I'm very aware of now, but was actually tricky for me to figure out how to see myself. The student was convinced that only 15 hours were needed for graduation, even though I kept saying 19 hours were required for graduation. And we did a number of reviews, and we talked about the individual classes, and when we ignored the DARS report, I agreed 15 hours was the right answer, but I couldn't figure out what was happening here. And I finally discovered this little issue right here. The student took this ECHE course, MPH 222, to count towards ECHE, and the DARS report did actually list this course correctly as an ECHE course in that area. But what happened here, because UIS limits the number of hours, lower level hours, to 60, and because this student already had 60 hours, when the student took MPH 222, it appeared as part of those 60 hours and actually kicked another 4 hours that were already in place off the transcript and into the area on the very bottom of the DARS report that says not included in the degree. So the solution here is that the student needs to petition MPH 222 to count towards the upper level hours of the degree, which is what you might do with a transfer course as well. When this petition is approved, and it will be approved, this is a pretty straightforward one, but when it's approved, MPH 222 will disappear from section 3 and will pop up here into section 2, so that at this point there's no longer 60 hours of lower level credits, but 56 hours, which means the DARS report will pull those 4 hours that were lost, pull them back in, so that ultimately the student will end up needing 15 hours. That might be a little complicated. I hope I didn't lose anyone there, because it took me a while to figure that out myself. But I just wanted to point that out, because realize that the DARS report is your formal record, but your formal record isn't always correct. Sometimes there are some tricks to this process that 2 people need to sit down and talk about this. And that's what I want to stress about the DARS report. I want you to use this as a tool to help you understand what's going on, but I don't want this to be a situation where you feel that you can't ask questions. So please use the DARS report, but never feel that you shouldn't be talking to me, you shouldn't be talking to your faculty, you shouldn't be talking to whoever you need to talk to get the right answer. So in summary, go ahead and use your DARS report. If you have any concerns, let me know, and we'll work out whatever problems there are.